I heard her whisper it as if the room wasn't filled with mourning. "Speed up the inheritance. I'm putting my claim in now." The words hit me before I could even understand their weight, a cold ripple running through the chapel. I stood at the back, hands clasped over the program, every detail of the morning fading into a blur of polished wood pews, bouquets of white lilies, and the faint scent of my husband's favorite cologne lingering in the air. Michael, my son, sat beside her, nodding quietly, eyes lowered, avoiding mine entirely, as if he could escape the truth I was beginning to realize. The organ played softly, a hymn meant to comfort, but I felt none of it. I focused on the sunlight streaming through the stained glass, casting fractured colors across the floor, each shard a reminder of all the fractured pieces of my family. I remembered my life with Thomas, the quiet evenings on the porch, the long talks over breakfast about future plans and family dreams, the way he used to pat my hand when life felt heavy. Now, standing here in the hushed whisper of grieving voices, I felt a strange detachment, a sense of watching from outside myself as Karen's words sank deeper into my awareness. I observed her slight smirk, the way she leaned toward Michael, as though sharing a private victory, a joke meant only for them. I kept my face still, held my posture, a shallow breath after another, counting the seconds, feeling the weight of decades of life compressed into this single morning. The choir sang, voices rising and falling, carrying the echo of sorrow. Yet all I could hear clearly were those words, those calculated words aimed at me, a quiet threat disguised as conversation. I recalled the first time I met Karen, her bright smile, polite manners, and the subtle ambition that had always shimmered just beneath the surface, now fully unveiled. I remembered Michael's hesitations, his silent compromises, moments when I had noticed slight shifts in his tone or gaze but dismissed them, unwilling to see the pattern. Sitting there, alone in my perception, the cushions beneath my knees pressing into the fabric of the pew, I noticed a small envelope tucked under the program, left by the funeral home staff, something that Thomas had insisted always accompany arrangements, a record, a ledger, a testament of his wishes, of his care, of his insistence that the family honor commitments. I wondered how many times over the years I had deferred my own needs, smoothed over arguments, foregone desires for peace, for love, for the illusion of harmony. And yet here, in this moment, I understood that harmony had always been fragile, contingent on their choices. The softness of the afternoon light mingled with the hushed tones of cousins, friends, neighbors, all speaking in murmurs, and yet a sharp focus remained on the two figures in front of me, whispering, scheming, plotting. I felt a strange mix of grief and clarity, the two coexisting, the pulse of life and death intertwined. My heart ached not just for Thomas, not just for the loss, but for the realization of intentions long hidden, plans set into motion with the casual cruelty of those I had raised, nurtured, loved. And still, I did not speak. I simply exhaled, a quiet, deliberate act, holding on to the steadiness of my own mind, the resilience of knowing, the control of understanding while the world around me moved in oblivious rhythm. The afternoon ticked by, measured in glances, in the quiet folding of hands, in the soft shuffle of feet across the wooden floors, and through it all, I stood, anchored by memory, by presence, by the resolve that would soon define my next steps. The chapel emptied slowly, the soft echoes of whispered condolences fading into the hallway. I remained behind, hands still clasped, staring at the polished wooden casket and the fresh lilies that Thomas had always loved. The sunlight that streamed through the stained glass now felt heavier, almost pressing down on the shoulders I had carried for decades. I walked toward the back pew, each step deliberate, observing the remnants of family and friends lingering in small clusters, murmuring memories and shared grief, unaware of the quiet calculation forming in my mind. Every detail of the room seemed sharper now. The subtle tilt of the framed photographs, the gleam of polished brass fixtures, the faint scent of wax from the candles, all ordinary, yet somehow oppressive in the shadow of recent revelations. I traced the edges of the pew with my fingertips, remembering long nights spent planning for family holidays, ensuring every gathering was seamless, each meal perfect, every celebration marked with care and thought. My eyes fell on the guest book, its blank pages waiting to be inscribed, a symbolic reminder of voices unheard, decisions unspoken. I thought about Karen and Michael, their laughter during casual visits that once seemed harmless, now carrying a different tone, a quiet arrogance that I had ignored for too long. I recalled the subtle shifts, the questions that seemed innocuous but were probing, the suggestions that sounded like concern yet were veiled demands. The silence of the room offered a canvas for reflection. I remembered the mornings making breakfast for Thomas and Michael, the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes, the warmth of family chatter filling the kitchen, and now the stark contrast of absence, the echo of a life I had built carefully, meticulously, now disrupted by intentions laid bare in a single whispered sentence. I ran my hands over the ledger Thomas had kept for important family matters, a record of his wishes, his reminders, and the quiet guidance he had left for me to follow. I understood, with an unsettling clarity, how much had gone unnoticed, how easily intentions could be twisted, and how much responsibility still rested with me to maintain the integrity of what was ours. I exhaled slowly, feeling the cool air settle into my lungs, a calm determination setting in, the kind that comes not from anger, but from deep understanding. I straightened my shoulders, adjusted the fabric of my dress, and allowed my gaze to sweep the room once more, noting the positions of chairs, the arrangement of flowers, the glances that lingered too long, each a subtle indicator of the plans and motives of others. The afternoon stretched, measured in the shifting light and the quiet movement of people departing, and I remained, a sentinel of memory, absorbing, assessing, and preparing for the steps that would follow, steps rooted in knowledge, patience, and the quiet assertion of presence that would not be overlooked or dismissed. Each breath I took reinforced the resolve forming inside, a commitment to act not in haste, but in precision, to navigate the delicate threads of family dynamics, the unspoken codes of respect, and the unseen leverage of truth. And through it all, I maintained my composure, the exterior calm masking the keen awareness of everything I had observed, everything I now understood, and the careful planning that would guide my actions in the days to come. I returned home that afternoon, the house quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. The living room felt different, every cushion and throw pillow in its place, but carrying an unfamiliar weight, a stillness that reminded me of absence, of decisions being made without my voice. I poured myself a cup of tea, the steam curling upward, filling the space with the gentle aroma of chamomile, grounding me in the present while my mind replayed the morning. I sat in my favorite armchair, hands wrapped around the warm mug, noticing the sun casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor, each streak a reminder of time passing, irreversible, carrying with it the truths I had now begun to piece together. I thought about the subtle signs I had overlooked, the slight hesitations in Michael's speech, the quick glances between him and Karen, the way she seemed to assert control over conversations that once felt natural and shared. I remembered the afternoons helping Thomas in the study, balancing the family budget, keeping track of investments, making sure everything was accounted for and fair. Now, as I sat alone, I realized the careful structures I had built were being bent to someone else's design, a design that had not included me, that had silently disregarded my presence and my authority within the family. I made a slow circuit of the rooms, observing small details I had once ignored, the placement of photographs, the way the light fell through the windows, the subtle patterns of daily life that now carried a tension I could feel with each breath. I opened a drawer in the sideboard, fingers brushing against the paper files Thomas had insisted on keeping, receipts and notes, his methodical annotations, a record of priorities and intentions. I took note of discrepancies, loose ends, and the subtle cues of manipulation I had begun to recognize. Each observation added a layer to the picture forming in my mind, a silent understanding that I would need to move carefully, deliberately, in the days to come. The afternoon stretched, measured by the quiet ticking of the mantel clock, the distant calls of neighbors settling into evening routines, and I remained in contemplation, a quiet determination building from awareness and reflection. I understood that this moment was not merely about loss, but about reclaiming a sense of clarity and authority, about recognizing patterns, intentions, and the means to act without haste but with precision. Each thought and careful assessment became a part of the strategy one would carry forward, a steady, unspoken plan to navigate the delicate balance of family, loyalty, and truth. As the sunlight faded, casting the living room in softer tones, I felt a resolve solidify within me, a calm readiness for the conversations, the decisions, and the subtle assertions of power that the unfolding days would require. Every movement, every glance, every detail became significant in ways I had only begun to understand, and through it all, I remained anchored, deliberate, and quietly formidable. I moved to the study, the soft afternoon light filtering through the blinds, casting parallel lines across the hardwood floor. Every object in the room seemed more defined, sharper, as if the clarity of thought I felt inside was mirrored in the details around me. The desk where Thomas used to sit was organized precisely, his ledger and pens arranged neatly, a testament to his careful nature, a reminder of the systems and rules he had upheld. I ran my fingers along the edges of the papers, scanning notes, letters, and financial statements, noticing subtleties I had previously overlooked. Each line of writing, each annotation, became a guide, a thread through which I could understand intentions, motives, and responsibilities that had been left in my hands. I paused at a letter from Thomas, one of those personal notes he had written during the last months of his life, words that conveyed thoughtfulness and an expectation that those closest to him would act with integrity. I remembered how he had often asked me to keep records, to ensure that the family maintained clarity and fairness in every matter. Now, in his absence, I realized that these simple acts of organization were more powerful than I had previously understood, offering insight and leverage. I looked at the photographs lining the walls, snapshots of birthdays, anniversaries, and family vacations, the faces of loved ones frozen in time, smiles that once seemed natural now, tinged with the tension of underlying ambition and self-interest. The contrast between the joy captured in those images and the quiet scheming I had observed earlier was stark, a lesson in the duality of appearances and intentions. I opened the filing cabinet, retrieving documents that confirmed my suspicions, small discrepancies in accounts and allocations that had gone unnoticed, overlooked in the day-to-day operations, but now unmistakable. I felt a sense of empowerment growing, a calm but undeniable awareness that I could act with precision, guided by knowledge rather than emotion alone. The room was silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside, and in that quiet, I planned carefully, considering every angle, every potential move. Each decision became a matter of timing, of observation, of strategy, a game played not with confrontation, but with awareness, patience, and subtle assertion of control. I noted Karen's tendency to underestimate patience, Michael's discomfort with scrutiny, and the ways in which small, deliberate actions could shift power without overt conflict. I prepared mental notes, a sequence of careful steps that would reveal truth, assert rightful authority, and create a foundation for the days to come. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, warming the room in a golden hue, I felt a measured calm, a readiness that was both internal and visible in my posture and demeanor. Every object, every document, every memory contributed to a framework of understanding, and I knew that the course I was setting would be guided by insight, composure, and the quiet resolve to act when the moment was right. I moved through the study, touching surfaces, arranging items, letting the tactile sense anchor my focus, each motion deliberate, each thought precise, as I mapped the landscape of intention, observation, and the careful orchestration of forthcoming action. The day closed around me, the lights softening, and within that stillness, I remained fully aware, fully present, and fully prepared. I spent the evening moving quietly through the house, the dimming sunlight casting long, soft shadows across the walls and furniture. The air smelled faintly of tea and polished wood, familiar and grounding, yet the weight of recent revelations lingered, pressing against the calm I tried to maintain. I made my way to the dining room, where the table was perfectly set for dinner, a habit I had maintained for decades, arranging plates, silverware, and glasses with meticulous care. I thought of Thomas, of the years we spent preparing meals together, of his laughter and gentle reminders to taste before seasoning, lessons in both cooking and life, now memories echoing in the quiet. My mind wandered to Michael and Karen, the subtle cues I had noted, the way decisions were being made without consultation, the unspoken expectation that I would remain passive, that my understanding and experience would be disregarded. I moved to the sideboard, fingers tracing the edges of envelopes and papers, noting details, filing mental notes, cataloging each small inconsistency, each hint of manipulation. The room was empty, yet filled with the presence of memory, with the ghosts of conversations past, reminders of promises made, intentions that were once aligned but now fragmented. I poured another cup of tea, the warmth seeping into my hands, a comfort in the midst of awareness, a ritual anchoring me to clarity and purpose. I considered each interaction, each phrase, each gesture I had observed over the years, connecting threads of insight, recognizing patterns, subtle but telling signs that revealed the depth of calculation in Karen and Michael's actions. The quiet ticking of the mantel clock marked the passage of time, each second a gentle insistence on careful observation and reflection. I prepared a small notebook, making notes about conversations, behaviors, and details of financial documents I had reviewed, a record of observation that would inform future steps. The day faded toward evening, the light outside softening, leaving the house bathed in a calm, amber glow that contrasted with the sharpness of thought and awareness forming within me. I reflected on the importance of patience, of letting plans unfold without haste, of observing the natural rhythm of human behavior, recognizing that action taken with precision and understanding would be more powerful than any immediate reaction. I moved through the kitchen and living areas, each space examined, each detail recorded in memory, noting the positions of objects, the subtle indications of routines, and the traces of intention left behind in simple acts and arrangements. By the time the night settled in, I felt a quiet determination solidify, a readiness grounded in observation, memory, and the strategic use of knowledge, an understanding that the unfolding days required patience, clarity, and the ability to assert influence with quiet, deliberate effectiveness. Every movement, every note, every observation contributed to a growing framework of awareness, a map of intentions and opportunities, and within this framework, I felt a growing sense of control and purpose, a poised and measured readiness to navigate the delicate balance of family dynamics, loyalty, and fairness in the days ahead. I woke early the next morning, the house still wrapped in the cool quiet of dawn, the soft light filtering through the blinds casting gentle stripes across the floor. I moved deliberately, each step measured, as I prepared a small breakfast, the scent of brewed coffee and toasted bread filling the kitchen, a familiar comfort in the midst of reflection. I poured my thoughts into careful observation, thinking about the patterns I had noticed, the subtle behaviors, the glances exchanged, the decisions being made in hushed tones that assumed my ignorance. I reviewed the documents I had examined the evening before, making mental notes of discrepancies and small details that spoke volumes, records Thomas had kept meticulously and left for me to understand and act upon. I reflected on past gatherings, the shared laughter, the holidays, the birthdays, all moments where I had invested time, care, and love, and now realized how these same actions had been quietly taken for granted, misinterpreted, or manipulated. I moved to the living room, tracing the lines of the furniture, the arrangement of objects, considering the impressions they left, the ease with which routine could be used to signal control or convey messages without words. The quiet was punctuated only by the soft ticking of the clock and the distant calls of early risers beginning their day, a contrast to the internal clarity forming, a mental mapping of interactions, intentions, and potential courses of action. I considered Karen and Michael, their habits, their tendencies, the ways in which they underestimated patience, and how small, deliberate choices could guide them without confrontation, a subtle assertion of presence and understanding. I reviewed my mental timeline of recent events, the whispers, the gestures, the overlooked cues, the records of financial and personal arrangements, creating a framework that would allow me to act with precision. Each observation strengthened a sense of calm control, the kind that comes not from impulsive reaction, but from a thoughtful alignment of knowledge, awareness, and strategy. I moved through the rooms again, noting minor details, arranging and rearranging objects, the tactile engagement reinforcing focus and clarity, each motion reinforcing the mental map I had built. The sunlight grew warmer, touching the furniture and walls, yet my attention remained on the nuances, the small but significant traces of intention embedded in everyday actions, and the recognition of how timing, observation, and subtle influence could shift outcomes. I sat briefly, taking slow sips of coffee, letting the warmth ground me, feeling the measured calm and resolve that had settled over me. I understood the importance of patience, of watching, of allowing events to unfold while maintaining readiness to act, knowing that every small action, every observation, every carefully noted detail would contribute to a clear and deliberate path forward. The morning stretched, each moment a preparation, each breath a reinforcement of awareness, a readiness to navigate the complex interplay of family, responsibility, and fairness, grounded in observation, composure, and quiet determination. I spent the afternoon in quiet observation, moving through the sunlit rooms of the house, each step deliberate, each glance measured. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of neighbors outside created a background rhythm to my thoughts, a calm frame in which careful reflection unfolded. I reviewed in my mind the details I had gathered, the subtle gestures, the fleeting expressions, the hushed conversations I had witnessed over the past days, each one a piece of the larger puzzle that was my family dynamic. The photographs on the walls, capturing moments of laughter and shared milestones, now seemed to carry dual meanings, memories intertwined with intentions that were not always aligned with truth. I made my way to the study, fingers brushing over the ledgers and correspondence left by Thomas, noting the meticulous annotations and reminders he had provided, documents that now served as both record and guide. I recalled conversations with friends, advice they had offered over the years, snippets of wisdom about patience, observation, and measured response, all converging into a framework for understanding and action. I sat at the desk, arranging papers, making mental notes of what needed to be clarified, what could be addressed through careful inquiry, and what required subtle, strategic observation. I observed the placement of chairs, the alignment of objects, the smallest shifts that hinted at patterns of behavior, each detail reinforcing my awareness of the household's current undercurrents. The afternoon light warmed the room, highlighting textures and edges, shadows lengthening as the day progressed, and I used the time to focus, to connect the threads of information, to anticipate movements and conversations that might reveal further clarity. I reflected on Karen and Michael, their routines, their tendencies, and the quiet ways in which influence and control were exerted, recognizing that timing and careful presence could reveal truths more effectively than confrontation. I reviewed in my mind the sequence of steps I would follow, the order in which inquiries and observations would be made, ensuring that patience guided action and awareness guided each decision. I considered the legacy of Thomas, the values he had instilled, and the careful balance he had maintained, recognizing that my own role was now to honor that legacy with clarity, precision, and measured purpose. I moved through the house, touching surfaces, noting arrangements, letting the tactile feedback anchor my focus, and with each careful motion, the sense of readiness strengthened, the calm awareness transforming into a poised strategy. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the floors and furniture, I felt the quiet power of observation, the subtle assertion of presence, and the steady readiness to navigate the unfolding days with clarity, insight, and deliberate effectiveness, each detail considered, each step prepared, each decision informed by patience and unwavering awareness. I waited until the evening settled in, the soft glow from the lamps filling the rooms with a warm, gentle light that contrasted with the sharp clarity of my thoughts. I moved slowly through the house, noticing the subtle shifts of light across the walls, the way shadows danced on the floor, each movement a quiet rhythm to accompany my reflection. I paused by the window, observing the neighborhood settling into quiet routines, children playing earlier in the day now replaced by the calm of dusk, neighbors returning home, doors closing softly. I thought of the conversations, the subtle exchanges between Karen and Michael, the tiny gestures that spoke volumes, The way they assumed my absence or ignorance would continue indefinitely, and I realized how long I had allowed patience to guide me, preparing for a time when knowledge and composure could be leveraged. I examined the living room once more, the placement of chairs, the arrangement of objects, the subtle signs of habits that revealed tendencies, patterns, and priorities, all data points in a mental map I was building. I returned to the study, where the ledgers, notes, and documents left by Thomas lay neatly. Each line, each signature, each note becoming a piece of insight into both his intentions and the landscape of opportunity for careful action. I reviewed what I knew, the behaviors observed, the discrepancies in routine, the subtle cues indicating manipulation, and I began to outline in my mind the sequence of steps that could reveal truth without confrontation, the approach that would allow clarity to surface while maintaining calm. I reflected on the years spent preparing meals, organizing family events, and maintaining order in the household, recognizing that those same skills of observation, planning, and quiet assertion would now serve a new purpose. I allowed myself a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the tea in my hand, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the muted sounds of evening settling into the house, each element grounding me in presence while my mind worked with precision and patience. I considered the subtle timing of interactions, the importance of listening and observing rather than rushing, and the ways in which measured attention could yield results far beyond overt action. I moved once more through the rooms, checking details, noting nuances, and letting the calm awareness guide me, understanding that influence could be exerted quietly, power asserted without words, and that the clarity and readiness I cultivated now would shape the unfolding days. I sat again, notebook in hand, mentally rehearsing the steps, the observations, the strategic patience that would carry me forward, each note a reinforcement of control, insight, and deliberate intent. As the night deepened, the house quiet and calm, I felt the steady foundation of awareness beneath me, the assurance that action, when taken with patience and knowledge, would be both precise and effective, guiding the family toward the truth and restoring a sense of balance and fairness that had long been assumed lost. I woke to the soft glow of morning light spilling through the bedroom window, the quiet hum of the neighborhood slowly awakening beyond the curtains. I moved deliberately, each step measured, feeling the warmth of the hardwood floor beneath my feet, a grounding presence as my mind processed the clarity and understanding I had cultivated over the past days. The house, familiar yet now imbued with new significance, held every detail I had observed, every nuance I had cataloged, each a marker of insight and awareness. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the warmth seeping through my hands, and traced the sequence of events in my mind, reviewing conversations, gestures, and actions with careful attention to timing and consequence. I considered Karen and Michael, their habits, their tendencies, the subtle ways they projected confidence while revealing their vulnerabilities, and I mapped the points at which patience and observation could turn the tide in a manner both discreet and effective. I moved to the study, running my fingers over the organized documents, reviewing annotations, letters, and financial records, each one offering clarity on intentions and priorities, each a guide for strategic, measured action. I reflected on the years I had devoted to family gatherings, shared holidays, and the careful attention to detail that had created stability and joy, and I recognized how these same skills of planning, observation, and gentle authority could now serve a new purpose, allowing insight to translate into deliberate influence. I paced slowly through the living room, noting the position of furniture, the arrangement of photographs, the subtle cues embedded in routine that revealed the behaviors of those around me, and I cataloged each detail in memory, reinforcing the mental framework I had built. I sipped my tea, appreciating the calm clarity of thought, the quiet power of knowledge and patience, and the capacity to act without haste yet with precision. I imagined the interactions of the day, anticipating responses, observing tendencies, and allowing the rhythm of family dynamics to guide my considerations, each observation sharpening understanding, each note of attention strengthening resolve. The sunlight shifted, casting long, soft shadows that mirrored the careful balance of vigilance and calm I maintained, and I allowed myself a sense of readiness, a quiet confidence in the steps I would take, grounded in observation, reflection, and measured action. I revisited each mental note, each observation, aligning priorities and anticipating outcomes, aware of how subtle influence and patience could shape understanding and responses without confrontation. The morning unfolded slowly, yet within it, a clear and deliberate course emerged, built upon awareness, patience, and insight, creating a foundation from which measured, purposeful action would flow. I felt anchored in presence, fully aware, fully prepared, and quietly powerful in the certainty that each detail, each observation, each careful decision would guide the family toward clarity, fairness, and the acknowledgement of truth.